Hi YouTube, it's your boy Grassy TV. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're checking out my full build guide for the Scorching Aura life stacking Pyromancer in Season 6 of Hero Siege. The Scorching Aura Pyromancer revolves around dealing damage over time to enemies via fire-based abilities, augmented by the Scorching Aura skill. This build focuses on enhancing your area of effect damage and sustained burning effects, making it particularly effective for clearing mobs and wilting down bosses over time with additional life stacking conversion mechanics. Quick disclaimer before we get started. This guide was created during the closed beta phase of Season 6 and is based on the content mechanics available at that time. Please know that certain features, balance changes, or other game elements may be updated or modified as the game progresses towards its official release. The information presented here may not fully reflect the final version of the game, and some aspects could be subject to change. While I strive to provide accurate and effective build recommendations, future adjustments by the developers may impact the viability of certain strategies. Always refer to the official patch notes for the latest insights. Now, let's go through some pros and cons of the life stacking Scorching Aura Pyromancer. First, you're really a walking simulator playstyle. You just walk around. You have this big circle that you put enemies into, and it does damage to them via tick rates. So it's a lot like Righteous Fire if you've ever played that from PoE. You also have some decent movement options. The main one being Pheonix Flight allows you to just blast through enemies quickly. You also get Blazing Trail, gives you a source of phasing. You can get some movement speed from it. It's really nice. Immense utility in the skills, and one of the best damage reduction buffs in the game, Fire Shield. This gives you a flat damage reduction. It's both physical and magical damage reduction on an active. It's very, very strong. You have it up pretty much all the time. It has a long duration once you get some plus skills into it. This skill will level the same in the beginning of the game as it will in the late game. So while you're leveling up, you're going to be using Scorching Aura, which is kind of a pro. I feel like a lot of builds you kind of have to level with something else, and then later on you can finally actually play the skill that you want to play. This does not work like that. You'll get your main skill level 8. You can use that all the way through from the start of the game all the way to your end game. And if you aren't colorblind like me, there is a really cool purple skin that everybody apparently loves. So you get purple. Now, some cons to this, it kind of has some button management. I know it is a walking simulator playstyle, but if you really want to maximize the DPS out of it, there can be quite a lot of buttons. You don't have to do this. You can just go a pure teleport only or walk only playstyle and just let your RF kill everything. But if you really want to maximize the character, you are going to have to manage a couple of buttons. This does require life stacking and damage over time stacking for its full potential. This can get a little bit confusing in the end game because a lot of people don't know how to manage this correctly. Just a little tidbit, you're going to stack your damage over time first and then life later. Your life stacking doesn't come in until much later in the end game, and it's really just becomes supplementary damage more than the actual main damage for your skill. You do have mediocre boss damage at first. Once you start getting into some of your mid game, late game gear, it really does start to ramp up quite linearly, I feel like. But it never gets to crazy, crazy numbers. It's just very sustained and gets, better over time. And your in-game gearing can be a little bit tedious, and some of this stuff will be expensive, especially as you start getting into the life stacking gear more specifically. Some of this gear can be quite expensive to obtain. So let's check out some of the skills that make this build work. The first one is Scorching Aura. This is your Righteous Fire skill. You just turn it on. You don't have to press anything afterwards. It just creates a circle around you. You walk into enemies and it will deal damage to them. You have two mobility skills. One of those is Pheonix Flight. This allows you to charge through enemies. The second one is Blazing Trail. This will leave a trail behind you, but it also gives you the ability to gain phasing. So you can just walk through enemies, which is really, really nice. You do have Fire Shield as a damage reduction buff. Fire Enchant will give you a bunch of additive damage. This actually works for spells as well, and will apply a stack of Ignite for your spells, which is super, super important. You also have Breath of Fire. We're going to be using this as a way to debuff enemies with Fire Break. You have passives like Fiery Presence that will increase your fire skill damage and some additional supplementary damage. Armageddon will rain down a bunch of meteors. I don't use it in the footage here. I don't personally like Armageddon, but if you would like some additional supplementary damage, you could run Armageddon. Now, one thing that you are seeing in the footage is Comet, and we are gaining Comet through a weapon proc that is causing us to drop comets on kill. And then anytime that you proc from a weapon or whatever it may be, it will proc the augmented form of that skill if you're on the character that skill is on. So for example, Comet, we get that on a Pyromancer. So because we're killing enemies on the Pyromancer and we're gaining the proc from the weapon, it's procking the augmented form of our Comet that we have in our sub skill tree, which is really, really cool. Now, if you are enjoying these build guides and would like to support the channel, I do have a donation link in the description of this video. Thank you for any of you guys that do support. I really, really appreciate that. Moving on to our skill trees. So we do not gain access to Scorching Aura until level 8. So we're going to have to use really any skill you want. You can use Blazing Trail. You can use Breath of Fire. I prefer Breath of Fire. Whatever skill you do decide to use, just make sure you put all your points into it. Get some energy in your attributes early. It's going to really help with your early mana sustain. So you're not running out of mana. You can just kind of blast with whatever skill that you have. Once you move on to level 8, we're going to respec, put 1 point into Blazing Trail. This is going to allow you to, again, phase through enemies. It's really nice to have. 1 point into Pheonix Flight. This is going to be your main movement ability. And then you'll put the rest of your points into Scorching Aura to give it as much base damage as you can. At level 16, be sure you put 1 point into Ignite, and then you'll put the rest of your points into Scorching Aura. At level 24, you'll have your 1 point into Fire Shield. This is a damage reduction buff. This is also, it's kind of up to you. You don't really have a whole lot of plus skills at this point in the game. So putting 1 point of Fire Shield isn't really going to do a whole lot in terms of your damage reduction. So you can save that 1 point if you'd like to, but you're eventually going to be using that. So I don't know. I like to put a point there anyway. Maxing Scorching Aura, and you'll put the rest into Fiery Presence. That's these guys right here. This is going to give you increased fire skill damage. This is a percentual increased fire skill damage, and it's a different, more damage multiplier than synergies from Scorching Aura. So this is going to be the most damage that we can get on our Scorching Aura. At level 60, we do put 1 point into Fire Nova. This is going to allow us to pull monsters in with an augment and put Fire Break on them. We'll also max our Fiery Presence, and then we'll put the rest of our points into Blazing Trail. This is a synergy for Scorching Aura. At level 80, you'll finish maxing your Blazing Trail, put the rest into Pheonix Flight. Again, this is just a synergy for our Scorching Aura. And then our final level 100 Scorching Aura tree is going to max Scorching Aura, max Fiery Presence, max Blazing Trail, max Pheonix Flight. Be sure you put 1 point into Ignite, 1 point into Fire Nova, and then you'll put the rest into your Fire Shield down here. I also do have 1 point into this passive on Fire. On Fire Enchant. Be sure you allocate 1 point into this as well. This is going to allow you to apply ignites with this Fire Enchant passive. Now moving on to subskill trees. These were a new feature in season 5. We're simply going to click on the plus sign on the top right of a skill. You can kind of see them on this tree here. Right, clicking on that plus sign will open up this window, allowing you to put 1 point in for every 5 character levels for every skill that you have allocated. So you can see on this entire tree here, we have a ton of skills. Every single one of these skills that has a plus sign on it, we can put 20 points in at level 100. It's a lot. So you can also respec this at any time. So feel free to kind of mess around with different setups. Here are the setups that I recommend for the sub-skill tree. Starting with Scorching Aura, this tree is going to maximize the Scorching Aura damage based on your maximum life. This is really going to be the best option available here. You could go with this top right option if you just wanted to get a bit of sustain out of the Scorching Aura. You really just kind of want to get the most damage out of it. Flaming Fissures is massive because it does additional damage. So this tree really focuses on proccing this as much as possible. And Flaming Fissures is located right here on this tree. And we're going to get an additional tick rate, additional area of effect to try to just proc it as much as we can. For Pheonix Flight, we're just going to go for the maximum flight speed. We get damage reduction during flight and a fire damage buff for Scorching Aura whenever you crash an enemy. So you want to be running into enemies. This will give you additional damage doing that. For Blazing Trail, we're just going to try and use it as a big movement speed buff while it's active. And this will also slow enemies by 75% whenever you run through them. That's insane. 75% slow is absolutely stupid. Fire Nova, this tree is going to pull monsters in so that it keeps them in your Scorching Aura range so you can do damage to them. It will also inflict Fire Break, which is a more damage multiplier. Comet, this tree, honestly, this is really up to you. I like this one. This causes the most amount of screen clutter. You get comments that just go absolutely everywhere. If this bothers you, you can go with something else, or you can just not spec this tree at all if you don't care about the comments. If they're not doing, they're not doing a ton of damage, but they're definitely helping clear out, what's left over, the things that you don't hit from your Scorching Aura later in the game. So Armageddon, this will make the Armageddon follow you around and it gives you just the maximum projectile. So I might use this if I just need to clear out like a big area really fast. I can hit it and it hits a bunch of stuff on the screen. And it follows you around as you're teleporting. Now, real quick pro tip while you're leveling, you can use your second loadout in your skill tree specifically for movement. You'll simply change Scorching Aura and Blazing Trail to have all the movement speed passes in the sub skill trees. This gives you 135% movement speed buff during your Blazing Trail. So, this is a really cool way where you can just jump to your other loadout, dump all of your attributes into Vitality so that you don't die, maybe get a little bit of energy so you have some mana to sustain, and then otherwise, you'll just basically be running zone to zone with 135% movement speed for free, which is really cool. Moving on to attribute allocation, skills can be quite expensive to use early on. Fortunately, Scorching Aura is not too much of a pain in the ass, but some of these other skills can cost some mana. So you're going to want to put some points into energy early before you can find some early sustain through mana on kill mechanics. After that, I would follow a 50-50 split rule between intelligence and vitality. So again, while we're leveling, we're going to put 2 points into intelligence, 2 points into vitality, and then enough points into energy for the build to feel comfortable. For me personally, I like to get 150, 200% or 200 mana in between Acts 1 and Act 3 just to have enough mana to sustain whatever spells or whatever it is that I'm doing. Once you hit the mid game, you're probably going to take out most of your points out of vitality as you're starting to get more items with life on them. And you can spec all of your points into intelligence because intelligence is magic skill damage or fire skill damage. It's the same thing. So intelligence will boost your damage. And then once we move into our full in-game life stacking variant, then you want to put all of your points most likely into vitality. It could also, I will edit this. It could also be 50-50 between vitality and intelligence. I can see a situation where if you aren't getting enough life or if you don't have that much magic skill damage, depending on what options you take, it could ultimately be that you need both. So you will have to play with this and just see what ends up being more damage. I suspect that going full vitality will be the most damage multiplier versus the intelligence, just because you're going to get more percentual increased damage from the vitality, what you gain out of the vitality, than you would the 400 magic skill damage. So, again, you might need to test that in game yourself just to be sure. For gearing, this section is really designed to give you workable suggestions on what gear to acquire at different stages of the game. You, as a player, need to look at your current gear and figure out what options make sense for you. Due to the addition of sub skill trees, there's going to be some item proc combos that we're not going to talk about here, so that they're really not discovered yet. It's really up to you to experiment. So, for pre level 60 leveling, or for excuse me, for leveling from 1 to 100, for most of leveling, you're going to be searching for rare or mythic items that will match your character's damage type, but you may come across some satanics that might also make sense for you to use. I cannot guarantee that you're going to drop any specific satanic, nor am I going to tell you to go farm for a specific satanic. It's a complete waste of your time. So my gear recommendations are not going to include them. Rune words, however, are nearly guaranteed as the bases are very common and you can obtain pretty much any rune up to Vex from your Act 1 normal nightmare and hell quests. Again, it is random which one you get, but say you get a gold rune from your Act 1 normal quest, you can then prospect that rune down to pretty much any of the early runes that you might need from the prospect station at the top right of Act 1. So this is a really good way to get the runes that you will need to make really early rune words that are very strong. So one thing to note with rune words is be sure that you're checking the runes level requirement and the basis level requirement to ensure that you're meeting both of those before making a rune word. The in-game journal can be a bit misleading on this. So for weapons, we're mainly looking for normal to mythic weapons. So you're looking for things like plus skills, flat fire skill damage. In season 6, flat has been changed. It now scales with multipliers. So you might find like +7 to fire skill damage. This is actually almost one skill because it's base damage. So be looking for flat damage. Fire skill damage or magic skill damage percentage is a more damage multiplier. You can also get like movement speed, faster cast rate, life and mana on kill, intelligence, because this is also magic skill damage, which is also fire skill damage. So that will increase your damage as well. And also finding energy and mana. I don't think enough people look for just flat mana and energy on gear. It can really help with your sustain. Now, you can also make a Sky Song as early as level 29. You'll look for a four-socketed sword or spellblade. And this will allow you to make a Sky Song. You get three skills on it, excuse me, two skills on it with 25 FCR or up to 35 FCR. This is a really good option. For offhands, same thing. We're just looking for fire related stuff, skill damage, life, resistances. You can also make Sky Song and a shield, right? That's got two skills up to 35% FCR. I recommend that you go for a Divine Contemplation. This is going to round out your resistances early. Getting up to 48 all res is very strong. For helmet, same thing. Just looking for fire related stuff, life resistances. You could also go for a Scholar Rune Word. This is just an Urt and a Sol, super, super cheap. You get a skill, you get some physical damage reduction and some sustain from life, mana on kill. For chests, same thing. Looking for anything fire related, life percentage resistances, faster cast rate. You can also get movement speed on chests. Um, or what I recommend, you can go for a shadow. You can make this as early as level 17. This will give you 25% movement speed and 25 faster cast rate. Really, really nice. Or if you find a three socket base, you can make a moltening. This is going to give you up to four skills with some faster cast rate, a ton of fire skill damage and penetration, and life on kill. Very, very strong chest. For gloves, we're just going to look for the typical stuff on gloves. Boots, again, looking for the typical stuff. I recommend that you prioritize movement speed as this character doesn't particularly have like a teleport skill. You do have Pheonix Flight to help move around with, but just getting some good base movement is very important. Also, this says cold, not fire. Now, you can also make quick steps as early as level 31. These will give you a ton of movement speed. There's really not a whole lot else here that's useful other than maybe the energy, but just the amount of movement speed you get at quick steps is insane. Now, you could go for a pair of ghosts. These can give up to +2 skills. You also get a decent amount of movement speed, some physical damage, and magic damage reduction. This will also grant you phasing for free, so you can just walk through enemies without having to proc your blazing trail. But you will need a Mal rune. Do not prospect a Vex for a Mal. It is not worth it. So if you get a goal or you get a Mal rune, then in that case, you could look for a two socket pair of boots and make ghosts in. I would even argue that the base doesn't really matter. You can make it in a D tier base. For belts, just looking for your typical fire related stuff, resistances, life, that sort of thing. Same thing for rings, just looking for, fire related stuff. Now, one thing I would recommend on rings, you can get faster cast rate on bases now. Like iron rings will always drop with faster cast rate. So getting that can be very nice. Just make the build feel easier to play, just more smooth, especially when you're using things like Fire Nova or Breath of Fire. Same thing for amulets. I don't know why all these say gold. Same thing for amulets. Looking for fire related stuff. You can get plus skills on amulets that could be really good to get early on. For charms, once again, looking for anything fire related, life percentage, getting your resistances in your charms is really strong. Finding a source of sustain from life and mana on kill. You can get movement speed. You can get enhanced defense, which is a super underrated affix. So all of these things are going to be really important to kind of rounding out your character and your charms. Now, once we hit level 100, our gear really, there's no best in slot at this point. We're just basically looking for early game rune words that are very strong or really strong mythics. Your item decisions are really just going to revolve around how your character feels over direct power upgrade. So, our main goal here is just pushing through Hell 1 and getting Hell 1 completed so that you can start farming Satanic Zones to start farming some of the mid game items to progress your character. But the big thing here is do not underestimate how strong mythic items can be. So if you're wanting to go into the life stacking pyro, this is not a good ideal until you've gotten a baseline of items to support Scorching Aura's base damage, right? So at this point, we are not trying to do life stacking just yet. I would say that even in the mid game, we're not directly trying to do um, life stacking. It just kind of happens from gearing. That's going to be more of an end game thing. So let's look at some of the weapons. First, Sky Song. Try and find a intelligence or a skills base, magic skill damage base, fire skill damage base. Any of these are fine. Divinity, if you have a Vex rune, very strong. Dragonite's Flail is basically the same thing as the Divinity. It just doesn't have the same stats. It's a little bit less strong. And then Revelation is also really, really good for Pyromancer because it's a Pyromancer O skill rune word. So you can make this in a book, right? And this will give you some skills, faster cast rate, as well as you get plus skills to like your Fire Shield and your Pheonix Flight, which is really nice. For offhands, you can make a Sky Song and a shield. Divine Contemplation is what I recommend you go for. And there's also Iron Giant Shield. If you get a well rolled one of these, you get up to 3 skills and some damage reduction. It's really good too. For helmets, Scholar is going to give you a +1. This honestly gets beat out by any of these other options pretty easily. Crown of the Midnight, Curator Secrets, Burning Gaze is the one that I would go for. You get up to 4 skills, some FCR, Fire Skull damage, and up to 35% penetration. That is ridiculous for a helmet, especially just an S tier helmet. Very, very strong. That's what I would go for personally. For chess pieces, you have a lot of options here. Moltening, Heaven's Might, Lichbane, Grand Wizards, Gladstone Goose. Gladstone Goose is going to be a good option just to get all of your reses figured out. Same thing for Heaven's Might. So you have up to 6 sockets on it. You can put a bunch of unrunes in there and get your resistances. Kind of the same thing with Justifier. You do get some up to 3 sockets on there, as well as you get up to 25% penetration on a Justifier. Really, if it was up to me, I would probably go with Moltening just because you get the most amount of skills out of it. With a ton of fire skill damage, penetration, life on kill. It's just such a solid chest for so cheap. My second best option would probably be Grand Wizards, 2 skills, FCR. You get up to 35 resistances and 3 sockets with some physical damage reduction. Like that's really, really strong too. Any of these chests will honestly serve you quite well. For gloves, same thing. Any of these are they're honestly really good. I would say out of all of these, Wisdom Hold is going to be your best option with up to 2 skills and some, tons of FCR. The Mevius's Mighty Gauntlets, this can roll with fire skills, right? So if you get a +3 fire skills, I can definitely see where this could be a really good option as well. But any of these will serve you just fine. For boots, quick steps is going to be the most movement speed, but you kind of want to go into ghost just because you get the plus skills, you get the phasing. It's just the better option. Um, Lava Treaders are also really good. You get a decent amount of penetration, you get a decent amount of fire skill damage, you get a decent amount of movement speed and 2 fire skills. So Lava Treaders, S tier boots, very very nice as well. For belts, any of these are good. I like Viper Magi's. You could also go for a sash of the Magi that got buffed in season 6. It's actually pretty good now, right? You get some faster cast rate on it. You get some magic skill damage. Very good. Viper Magi does give you 15% all resistances. Commander Sash does give you some resistances as well on a skill. And Knight's Girdle is going to give you the most skills with some PDR and some vitality. So really, it kind of comes down to you and what you need on your build. For rings, most likely you're going to run 2 Coda Wedding Bands. This is going to give you the most amount of movement speed, as well as you get some life on it. This will also be damage since you are still using life as damage. Iron Ring of Prometheus if you want to get some magic find. Satanic Eyes, you might rock maybe 1 Kodo band and 1 Satanic Eye just to get the all resistances from a Satanic Eye. That could be a really good combination. Or maybe the same thing on a Ring of Talus. You can get some life percent on a Ring of Talus, right? With a Satanic Eye or a Kodo's Wedding Band. And a combination of any of these would be just fine. You can also find mythic rings that have plus skills on them. Those could be really strong as well. You get, +3, +4 on a mythic ring. It's really good. For amulets, Unfathomable Puzzle, Shining Pearl, All Seeing Eye, Spirit Pendant, Satan's Precious. All these are really good. All Seeing Eye is probably the one that I recommend the most just because you do get the +3 skills and a bunch of magic find. But you could get away with Shining Pearl. This has 50% magic skill damage with some life. Spirit Pendant giving you a ton of resistances. And Satan's Precious also coming in with 3 skills and some fire resistance. So any of these would be just fine. Now, as far as charms go, people underestimate how good charms are. You can use your charms as a way to cap out your resistances. You can get a ton of life. I remember whenever I was leveling, I had 10,000 life at the end of Nightmare on when I was playing Viking. I was playing a life stacking Viking, but you can get so much freaking life from charms. Do not neglect that. You can get magic skill damage. You can get enhanced defense. This is your chance to dodge projectiles and attacks. You can get cast speed, You can get movement speed, you can get life and mana on kill. All of these things are very, very good to get on charms. The same thing goes for your satanic charms. These aren't really an early game buy, as they have changed these. Solar charm is no longer just an S tier charm, is now an SS charm. But the amount of juice that it provides, up to 35 penetration, is just so damn good that I wanted to talk about it in this section. Satan's Chalice is also a super cheap option. You get up to 3 skills, you get up to 15 attributes and resistances. This is really nice because it can counteract the it can counteract the minus 75 that you're getting from the solar charm. So these two together is just such a strong combo. Now, once we move into the mid game, we're going to have to start scaling our damage. So, in order to scale your damage as a firecaster, there's several aspects that you really need to understand. First is increased fire skill damage. This is a direct damage multiplier on your skill's base damage. So, a similar mod to increase fire skill damage is magic skill damage. Magic skill damage will include all of the elemental types, so cold, fire, lightning, poison. It's all of them. And then intelligence is also magic skill damage at a 1-to-1 ratio. So all of these are important to scaling up your damage and are all added together before it multiplies your base damage. So for example, if you put a bunch of points into your Scorching Aura that has 1,000 base damage, you then take your fire skill damage percentage, your magic skill damage percentage, and your magic skill damage percentage gained from intelligence. You add those together, you get the sum of all of those, and then you multiply that by the base damage of Scorching Aura, and that's how you get that damage. So gaining more base damage is done through soft points and hard points in skills. A soft point would be a point gained from skills, like you put on a Sky Song, you get plus skills from that. That is a soft point. Hard points are capped at 20. You can only put 20 points into a skill. So it's important to note that plus skills are generally, they don't have diminishing returns as to where percent skill damage will at certain levels, especially on a life stacker. Now, we can continue scaling this damage with faster cast rate, which literally increases your cast rate. It's a little bit different with Scorching Aura since you cannot change the tick rate for Scorching Aura outside of the sub skill tree. So gaining faster cast rate is not going to make your Scorching Aura hit more often, but any of these other skills that you're using, like Teleport or Breath of Fire or even Armageddon, technically with it having a cooldown, it still increases, or excuse me, it decreases the animation time for you to actually put that skill out. And it also decreases the time it takes you to use that skill and then maybe teleport around again. So it does help with making a build feel way more smooth. Faster cast rate is also has a soft cap of 150%, after which you're going to start getting a diminishing return. So you want to try and get as much cast rate as possible without losing too much value in other stats. Now, monsters in Hero Siege also have elemental resistances. In order to reduce them, you're going to need sources of minus enemy fire resistance. This is not a res difference, it is a reduction. So if you obtain, say, 100% ignore fire resistance on a monster that has 10,000 fire res, that monster will have 0 fire resistance because you are ignoring 100% of it, right? It's not going to have 9,900, it's going to have 0%. This is extremely, extremely strong for boosting your damage. Now, the last couple pieces of the puzzle are going to be Fire Break and extra damage to burning monsters. Fire Break in Hero Siege it's kind of like a curse. If you apply 50% break to a monster, it's going to take 50% increased damage from the element break stated, which in this case is fire break. So it's going to take 50% increased fire damage. It's ridiculous. Now, different sources of elemental break typically do not stack. So you can't get 50% break from Fire Nova, 50% break from Scorching Aura, 50% break from Armageddon, 50% break from Comet, and all of those stack up to be 200% break. It doesn't work like that. There are a few skills in the game that do, but none of them, the Pyro, are going to do that. Now, the very last big piece of the puzzle, especially for a pyromancer, that is very, very, very important to scaling the damage, is extra damage to burning monsters. This will multiply all of these previous values, right? All of this gets added together. So your base damage, then you multiply all of your increased multipliers. Then you take your pen, you take your fire break, you take all of this stuff, you get a value, your damage value. Then you have extra damage, and that extra damage is now multiplying all of that. It is a more multiplier. It's very, very strong. And a build like this requires a lot of sources of extra damage to burning monsters to really start scaling its damage up to high numbers. Right. So it's very important that we understand that. So let's talk about weapons. The best in slot weapon for the build is Saint Houdini's. There's really nothing better. In my opinion, you could go for a Dawnbringer if you wanted to, but honestly, St. Houdini's is going to be much cheaper, especially at the start of a season. I would personally try and rush for one of these. It's just because they add so much freaking value, up to 8 skills, FCR, 100 intelligence with another 45 attributes. That's 145 fire skill damage plus the up to 50 here, right? So that's almost 200% fire skill damage with another 50% minus enemy fire resistance. It's stupid. It's actually insane. This weapon also is what's giving us the comments on kill, right? And this puts it at a level 145. Now, it's important to note that whenever you're procking a skill like this, it is not gaining all the synergies as well. It's only dropping it as just a base 145 skill, right? Not 145 plus all synergies. If you can't get into a St. Houdini's, your other options are going to be finding a plus skills base for Divinity or finding a plus skills base for Revelation. For offhand, Crematorium's Pledge, nothing better. It's insane damage. It gives life and mana and all res. It also, this is a +5 skill base, by the way, so that I have +7 skills on it. There's also up to 60% extra damage to burning monsters. That's stupid. You also get fire skill damage, you get penetration, you get everything. This is a very, very strong chest or shield. Be sure you try and make one of these early. Very strong. For helmets, Side of the Gods has most value because it gives you the option to teleport around. But there are some other options. You could go for Harley Quinn's Veil. This will give you some MDR, PDR, bunch of resistances, Magic Find. Really nice helmet. Lava King Mask is also a good helmet. You get up to 6 skills, FCR, penetration, up to 35 fire skull damage, life, Magic Find. It's also a really nice helmet. For chest, Muspelheim's is broken, right? It has every step that you'll want on the build. You get up to 8 skills, extra damage to burning monsters, penetration, fire skill damage, all res, up to 4 sockets, some additional fire res. It has everything that you need, right? Now, if you can't find a Muspelheim, maybe you just end up dropping a Gem King's Garb yourself. You could socket 6 pristine rubies into this and get a +6 skills. And you get a shitload of life on this. You get 60% increased life with 60 vitality. And then you also get 90% fire skill damage. So this can be a decent option if you can't get into the Guardian plate. For gloves, Grasp of the Phoenix. Really nothing better here for the mid game. You're getting 7 skills, FCR, extra damage to burning monsters, fire skill damage. It's just really strong. For boots, ideally you're going to want to go for ether walks with fire skill rolls. Again, it does have a random skill roll in here, so fire is what we're looking for. It does take a Sir rune per roll, so good luck on that. Um, Making them with any element is better than not having them at all. One of the main reasons here is because you're getting this mana devour when you're casting. This is going to help you with your mana sustain tremendously, especially on boss fights. Be sure you try and find a base with plus skills on it. For belts, we're looking for the Soul Burn belt. This has a Soul Burn proc on it. This gives us 135% burning damage, and it is very, very strong for firecasters. You want this. Very strong. It also has extra damage to burning monsters. It also has 3 fire skull damage, up to 30% pen. Stupid belt. For rings, boss rings were moved to Inferno difficulty in season 6. So you're most likely not going to be able to farm one of these out, even in some of the mid game gear. So you're going to hate yourself, but you could go and farm out a boss soul gem, right? To make an Azazel's Despair. Azazel's Despair's drop rate also got nerfed. It's a bit harder to obtain, a +3 one now. However, the soul gem was buffed in season 6. It's now a 1 in 11,000 chance. I rolled 9 times, so this is much better than the 1 in 15,000 rolled 8 times. It's still going to take you some time, but you could go and farm out a soul gem and then get a recall ring from the Chaos Tower in Hell 5 to mirror that ring. You could also simply just find a plus skills mythic ring and try and mirror that. That could be a good option as well. And of course, if you find a St. Aaron's, this is fantastic as well. For amulets, both of these are really good options. You can also farm Uber Damien for Truthful's Fall. If you get lucky on some of the rolls, Truthful's Fall has some random rolls on it. So you could get, like fire skills, attributes, pen, that sort of thing. Lilith's Scorn gives you up to 60% magic skill damage. You also get some explosionary effect. This build doesn't really use a whole lot of explosions, so this isn't as useful, but you do get up to 25% all resistances on it. Another option that I don't have listed here would be a Pendant of Eternity. This will give you a ton of magic skill damage, and you get a proc for regenerated one. This will increase your FCR by a pretty high amount. This will allow you to teleport around much quicker. It's generally only used for whenever you're speed farming. You're not going to use it on a boss. You would go for like a Philosopher's Stone or something with like plus skills on it. Now for charms, here's some of the charms that I recommend for you to grind out for. You can also find very strong mythic charms with plus skills, magic skill damage, or intelligence. For your Tablet of the Awakening, you could go for either 4 elemental gems or 4 runes. Either of those will be just fine. However, you have, Annihilator, Lilith's Wrath, Fire Melon, Torsine's Anvil, Fulgurite, Satan's Chalice. All these are going to be really good charms to get. And then once again, going back to our charms here, you do have that solar charm that's an SS tier. If you're having trouble capping out your pen, this could be a really good way to do that. Fortunately, fire builds get a lot of penetration for practically free. You see, like every single item we were looking at had penetration on it. So you're most likely going to hit that 100% fairly easy in the mid game. But if you need an extra source, a solar charm could be a way to finish that out. Now, looking at our end game min max, when it comes to this, there are a lot of different variables to consider, as well as people have different play styles and goals with their characters. So, starting in season 6, Hero Siege will also have a new item called the Satanic Crystal. When cubed with an item, it will either add a new affix or destroy your item. This takes min maxing a character really to a whole new level. As of right now, I do not have a list of possible corrections, so my gearing recommendations are not going to include them. This section will include a build I use for in-game testing, but it can really still be pushed further with the new Season 6 features or mythics that I was unable to obtain. Now, this endgame build is the result of my testing and refinement, and I can confidently vouch for its effectiveness. However, builds are always subject to change, and they're really up to personal preference and evolving strategies. There may be some more optimal variations depending on your playstyle, the zones that you're tackling, or the bosses that you're facing. Feel free to experiment and adapt. This guide serves as a strong foundation, but really the best build is the one that works for you. Now, I'm going to have a couple of different options here because we have a non-life stacking variant that you're most likely going to have to build into first. And we also have a life stacking variant that you will build into later. So here's the non-life stacking version, as well as the items that I have on it. And then here's our life stacking variant. And the items that we have on it. Now, looking at relics, here's a list of relics that work for the build. You can go for Holy Bible, Triforce, Lost One, Magic Mushroom. You could swap some of these out. Maybe you don't want Triforce, you want Holy Grail. Really, Triforce also got nerfed. It's only 10% res, not 30. So you could really kind of drop Triforce once you get your reses capped and go for anything else in here. For potions, here's a list of potions that you'll want on the build. Coffee container is very strong. This will give you increased damage to burning targets. Practically everything that we do is burning, so you'll want one of these, very strong. Ghostly potion will give you magic skill damage. Wizard potion will enhance your cast rate. Almond Raw's demise will give you a chance to explode enemies on kill. Elixir of unworldly cognition. This is now an SS tier heroic potion. This will give you increased experience. Wizard Potion will give you a oh shit button for life and mana. Gold Inlaid Potion, this is now an SS tier Angelic Potion, but this will give you some extra Magic Find and Gold Find. Empty Bottle of Vodka will give you additional all skills. And Bottle of Rad will give you movement speed and phasing. Probably the least desirable potion, but still an option. For chest augments, Monstrosity is going to be our most damage by far. Survivor Shield is going to be great for hardcore, and Spellslinger is a good way to get some FCR if you just want to be able to teleport around a bit better when you already have billions of DPS. I would still probably go with Monstrosity. Another option here you could think about is Avariciousness. If you just want to use this as a gold find build, Avariciousness will give you a ton of magic find and gold find as well. Now, for hero levels, I do have a whole guide talking about how to spec your hero level tree. Since this tree generally doesn't provide you any player power, it's really very situational as well. So the video will describe different paths that you might take based on, where your character currently is in its situation. So we'll have a link in the description to this video, as well as I will have a full list or a video for all of the glyphs in the game. Glyphs do not provide any player power currently. It's just all utility to enhance your gameplay, like giving you additional drops on certain things. So I will have a video that will show you all the glyphs currently in the game for you to check out and kind of decide which one of those you might want to go for. Now, for your mercenary, we are going to use the Act 1 Night Merc. Currently in Season 5, Mercs are Magic Find Orbots, and this doesn't change in Season 6. So we're going to be looking for as much Magic Find on gear as we can get. Here's a snippet of the skill tree for our mercenary. We're mainly just going for the most damage reduction, life on hit, life regen, armor, that sort of thing. For weapons, we have a few Magic Find options as well as one aura option. So this aura will give you a bunch of resistances. It's a very cheap rune word. Personally, I don't like having my resistances on my Merc because if my Merc dies and I just lose out on that res. And with resistances changing in Season 6 to be a bit harder to cap out, it's not going to be the best option unless your Merc is really thick and tanky. That's up to you. But here are some Magic Find weapons. Same thing for chests. There's some different Magic Find chests. Mystic Lure is going to be the best one with 2 sockets. And you'll throw Ist runes and all of that. Same thing for weapons. Ist runes and everything for more Magic Find. Helmets, same thing. Really kind of depends on your budget. The bucket is now an SS tier heroic or satanic. I'm not sure which one. But it's now going to have 5 sockets and some additional Magic Find. So it's going to be a bit more expensive. It'll probably be more expensive than a Harlequin Veil. Either way, you'll put Ist in any of this. And same thing for your offhands. Leprechaun Greed also got buffed. I believe it's now an SS tier satanic. It's going to have some additional Magic Find. I think either 5 or 6 sockets. So you'll want to put Ist in any of these. I've also found that Novice Tower with 4 sockets, this one's really, really good. Magic Find based on level, you get an additional 20%, and then all of the Ist runes. This is a really, really good shield as well. So any of these will serve you just fine. Moving on to our loot filter. To make highlighting items easy, I'll quickly explain how to add a filter in less than 30 seconds. You're going to press escape, go to options, gameplay, loot filter. Your screen will look like this. On the far right side, you'll see you have these highlight settings here. You're simply just going to click on Firecaster in the highlight preset. This is just going to ensure that you are highlighting items that have affixes on them that you want to see. This will not hide any items whatsoever. Now, on the same screen, you will have this left side. This is your loot filter. This can hide items. So what I recommend is that you just follow the presets that are listed here. If you're in normal difficulty, you'll click on normal. If you're in nightmare difficulty, you'll click on nightmare. If you're in hell difficulty, you'll click on hell. Now, I will have some loot filters that I will be making for a season start. Maybe a whole video just kind of explaining what I pick for each different archetype so that you can, if you want to follow a filter that I would use, then I will have a video for that in the description of this video here in the next couple of weeks, as well as I will have some Endgame filters in there as well. Most likely won't be updating that until after the season starts and I've gotten to Endgame and kind of built out my filter. So we'll see. I might have just an initial Endgame filter and then we'll build into a second one later on. So either way, I will have filter information for you guys next season shortly. Now, some additional helpful resources. This is great if you're a newer player, returning player. I have a ton of just different things in here to give you a better understanding of Hero Siege basics. Now, if you're a brand new player to Hero Siege, I do have a full beginner's guide. It's 2.5 hours. I have timestamps to everything. If there's anything that you want to know about Hero Siege, like what is an angelic key, I have a timestamp for that. What is a Bifrost Keep? I have a timestamp for that. So I do have a link to this video in the description as well. Now, before you get started, be sure that you equip your companion. Everyone gets one for free. Set up your highlight filter, configure some of your controls. Here are my controls currently, if you want to copy my settings. I also suggest that you change your minimap hotkey to tab. This will make the minimap overlay permanent like Diablo 2 and PoE. Be sure you swap your FPS to 60 FPS. Trust me, it'll make a huge difference in your performance. And click on, this teaches you how to add skills to your skill bar. You simply just click on, the right click here and then pick the skill that you want to put in that slot. Now, while you're leveling to level efficiently, um, you're going to have to learn the difference between additive damage and skill damage. Additive damage does not work for fire casters. It only works for melee attacks. The only thing that you want to look for is skill damage on gear. This is what's going to give you additional damage. Additive damage no longer works in any way for fire skill damage. Right? There's no longer additive fire skill damage. There's only fire skill damage. Right? And this is now base damage as well. Outside of completing each act, moving through the campaign, there's also some zones that you can farm for just items and XP. Here's a list of those here. Like for me, example in normal, I like to go to Rat Den at the very start of my season. This will just help me get some of those early items to push through. So just have a list of different places that you might want to go throughout the game to get some experience or some items pushed through. Now, there are no required quests to complete each difficulty, but there are some that can give you some supplies for early gearing. So I recommend that you do Act 1 Normal, Act 1 Nightmare, and Act 1 Hell quests. Act 1 Normal quests are going to give you a movement speed charm and a movement speed potion. This is really, really nice, especially for characters that don't really have a movement skill or a teleport. Pyromancer kind of does, but it's just really nice to have that base movement speed while you're leveling up. All of these will also give runes. Act 1 Normal, Act 1 Nightmare, Act 1 Hell can give you runes up to Vex, which is very strong. Especially if you hit an early Vex rune, you're super happy. Here's a quick snippet of the damage formula that we talked about earlier. If you would like to have if you want to pause the video and read through this. I will have a link to the season 6 patch notes in the description below. There's a ton of stuff happening for season 6. I recommend that you go check that out, see what's new in the season, see what's new on some of the different builds. It's going to be an insanely fun season. I'm super excited. It looks like right now the ETA for season 6 is March 14th. I expect that we'll be getting an official announcement for that here pretty soon. Either way, the patch notes are in the description below. Same thing for the Hero Siege wiki. We do have an official Hero Siege wiki that is maintained by some of the mods and other players in the community. So I do have a link to this in the description. You can go and check out this for just additional information on some things that aren't covered in this guide and just different things that there's a lot in this wiki that isn't anywhere else. You can't find this information anywhere else. So I think it's a really good read and more people need to know about the wiki. Now, once you hit level 100, I get this question all the time. What do I do? I made a full video about early game progression tips and tricks. So I will have a link to this video in the description as well. And this has a full written guide, 13 pages of all sorts of different things that you will want to do on your character, some different farming tips and strategies once you hit level 100. Also in the description is a link to the Hero Siege helper. Bookmark this. This is made by Seiko. It's a really, really cool website that just gives you a ton of different information on things in a different way, as well as there's a builder tool that he's working on for this website, which is really cool. So I wanted to show him some love and be sure you guys bookmark this. Very, very good tool. I will also have a link to all of my build guides in the description as well. So if you are looking for, maybe this one didn't meet the expectations of a build that you're wanting. If you want to check out some of my other content, I will have a link to my compendium for season 6. And yeah, with that being said, that is going to wrap up this video of the Scorching Aura life stacking Pyromancer in season 6 of Hero Siege. Be sure to like and subscribe to the video to keep up to date with all of my future Hero Siege related content and news. Come check me out live at twitch.tv/Garaxy_TV. We are live. I think we're going to be playing Stormweaver next, leveling through that. And thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.